The Democratic Party and the Republican Party was just like the old patent medicine drummer that used to come around our country. He had 2 bottles of medicine. He'd play a banjo and he'd sell 2 bottles of medicine. One of those bottles of medicine was called Hypopolorum. And another one of those bottles of medicine was called Lopapaharum. Finally, somebody around there said, is there any difference in these medicines? Oh, he said, considerable. They're both good, but they're different. He said that Hypopolorum is made from the bark off the tree that we take from the top down. And that Lopapaharum's made from the bark that we take from the root up. And the only difference that I found between the Democratic leadership and the Republican leadership was that one of them was skinning from the ankle up and the other from the ear down when I got to Congress. to the tables which we have assembled, it is our estimate that 4% of the American people own 85% of the wealth of America, and that over 70% of the people of America don't own enough to pay the debts that they owe. How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with. Now, how are you going to feed the balance of the people? What's Morgan and Baruch and Rockefeller and Mellon going to do with all that grub? They can't eat it. They can't wear the clothes. They can't live in the house. Give them a yacht. Give them a palace. Send them to Reno and give them a new wife when they want it. If that's what they want. But when they've got everything on the God's living earth that they can eat and they can wear and they can live in, and all that their children can live in and wear and eat and all their children's children can use, then we got to call Mr. Morgan and Mr. Mellon and Mr. Rockefeller back and say, come back here. Put that stuff back on this table here that you took away from here, that you don't need. Leave something else for the American people to consume. And that's the program. We're not going to destroy the Gulf Refining Company. We're not going to destroy the Standard Oil Company. But we're going to say that the limit of any one man's stock ownership in the Standard Oil Company is from $3 to $5 million to that individual, and that the balance of the people of America own the balance of what the Standard Oil Company is worth. All right. Then we start from the bottom, that the 25 or more million American families shall have a homestead, a home, and the comforts of a home, including an automobile and a radio, the things it takes in that house to live on. We say to America, 125 million, none shall be too big, none shall be too poor, none shall work too much, none shall be idle. No luxurious mansions empty, none walking the streets, none impoverished, none in pestilence, none in want, but in the land blessed by the smile of the Creator, with everything to be consumed, to be eaten, to be worn, that America will become a land sharing the fruits of the land, not for the favored few, not to satisfy greed, but that all may live in a land in which the Lord has provided an abundance sufficient for the luxury and convenience of the people in general, I think.
You may have heard that Hostess is declaring bankruptcy. Oh no, we're gonna lose the Twinkie and the Ho-Ho. Who gives a crap? I mean, Twinkies never decompose because they're made out of some sort of industrial chemical compound. And Ho-Hos are coated in this chewy plastic that's supposed to be some sort of stand-in for chocolate. So who cares? 18,550 Hostess bakery workers, truck drivers, janitors, etc. all across the United States who are going to be losing their jobs. Now, Americans keep shoveling Hostess snack cakes into their faces like we're in some sort of eating contest with the rest of the world, which, if you look at our childhood obesity rates, we're clearly winning. So it's not like a sudden drop in sales has anything to do with Hostess suddenly going under. And it's not the workers' fault that the products that they make are wax-coated dish sponges filled with sugar. Cost-cutting by bean counters for maximum profitability has probably had a lot more to do with the recipe than anything having to do with nutrition, quality, or flavor. So if Americans keep shoveling these cholesterol delivery devices into their faces at breakneck speed, why the hell is Hostess going under? Was it the workers demanding that they have a wage that they can live on and feed their families with? Because that's what the Hostess executives would have you believe. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that the folks running Hostess are a bunch of liars, because we already know that they're thieves. Now, while Hostess was trying to cut pay for their workers by 8% and cut their benefits by 32%, their CEO, Brian Driscoll, gave himself a 300% raise, increasing his yearly take-home pay from the insanely wealthy range of $7,500,000 a year to $2,550,000 a year. $2,550,000 a year. The other executives enjoyed similar pay increases. Now, sure, Americans are fat and we eat horrible food, but to justify this sort of pay increase, Americans would have had to have gone on a Hostess snack cake only diet for years. And since that clearly didn't happen, we have to ask the question of where the hell did all this money come from? Truth is, this isn't new money. It didn't come from anywhere. These executives, like cancer cells ballooning to enormous size and stealing nutrients and energy from surrounding cells, these executives stole. They stole money from the shareholders. They stole money from the company's infrastructure. Prior to filing for bankruptcy, they shut down 3 different bakeries and liquidated the assets, sold them off. They stole money from the pensions of their employees and currently owe $160 million to employee pensions. And since they stole so much, they didn't need to work anymore, so they filed for bankruptcy because they clearly didn't need the company. And now they have the gall to blame workers who are making less than $20 an hour. So of course they have to lie. You can't admit to stealing and then expect to get away with it. Very few people are buying their bullshit and are calling this an example of crony capitalism, corporate capitalism, vulture capitalism. But what they seem to be missing here is that you don't need a modifier. This is capitalism. This is how it's supposed to work. Under capitalism, there's a small cabal of people at the top of an organization who, through the artifices of property law, get to claim ownership to all the means of production, meaning here, the buildings, the property, the trucks that deliver the goods to market, the machines that bake the baked goods, the raw products that go into the baked goods after they've been baked. All of this, despite the fact that they may have never laid their hands on a single bag of flour, on a single baking sheet, or a single kettle of melted ho-ho plastic. And yet somehow they still get to claim ownership over all of it. Meanwhile, from the other end of the spectrum, workers have to beg and plead to remain employed. And if the kings at the top decide to dispense with all the peasants at the bottom, there's really nothing that the peasants at the bottom can do about it. But we can refuse to comply with the systems of power, which is why it's so important that we be supporting the Hostess workers as they continue striking. And the corporate elites, they really do think of us as being peasants. In fact, they have a life insurance policy scam with exactly that name. Have you heard of Dead Peasants Insurance? Well, in the 1990s, Winn-Dixie took out life insurance policies on their 36,000 employees without their employees' knowledge or consent, and the company named itself as the policy beneficiary. The insurance brokerage firm that placed the policies prepared 2 now infamous memoranda that described the employees as being dead peasants. Now, the reason why we know about this is because the memos were part of the court's record in a lawsuit in which the U.S. Court of Appeals in the 11th Circuit held that Winn-Dixie's policies were a sham transaction in order to shelter income from the IRS, which is a double win for Winn-Dixie. Not that they got caught, but what they were proposing to do is hide profits that their company was making by purchasing these phony life insurance policies. And then, when their employees die, despite, whether they may or may not work for them in a decade, they still get to claim the life insurance policy when their employees die. Again, all of this is done without the employee's knowledge or consent, which is why I think it's about time that we peasants storm the castle and institute a democracy. And I'm not talking just about democracy in our government, but also democracy in our workplace, economic democracy. The hostess workers should put down their picket signs and go back into the factories and just take them over. Their executives stole worker pensions, gutted the company, gave themselves huge bonuses for doing so, and then declared bankruptcy. They are thieves. The factories, the bakeries, should belong to the workers. I'm fed up with unions always going into this negotiations with management crap. Negotiations assume that the other party involved has some sort of legitimate claim on the stakes at hand. The executives gave up any claim to legitimacy when they stole pensions and gutted the company. They deserve nothing. Handing over the entire company over to the workers is the least that they could do to make up for the fact that they stole $160 million in pension funds. And once the workers are in charge, maybe they can improve the quality of their recipes, focusing on flavor, nutrition, and quality rather than on maximum profitability. That, and any day of the week, I'd rather have workers in charge of a company than a bunch of thieving liars. This is a Punk Patriot. To life, liberty, and pursuit of a less fucked up government. And a less fucked up workplace.
Killing you!
I can't see you, but I know you're here. I feel it. You've been hanging around since I got here. I wish I could see your face. Just look into your eyes and tell you how good it is to be here. Just to touch something. See, that's cold. I feel good. Here, to smoke. Have coffee, and if you do it together, it's fantastic. Or the draw. You know, you take a pencil and you make a dark line, then you make a light line, and together it's a good line. Or when your hands are cold, you rub them together. See, that's good, that feels good. So many good things. But you're not here. I'm here. I wish you were here. I wish you could talk to me. 'Cause I'm a friend. Compañero.
If there's a Hostess factory near you, I strongly suggest that you go down there and hang out with the striking workers and show solidarity with them. You know, buy a box of coffee, maybe some donuts, and share it with them. Talk about how much you support what they're doing, and maybe plant the seed that they should just go in and take the factory over. Walmart workers across the United States are going on a wildcat strike on the biggest shopping day of the year, Black Friday. If you are an unemployed radical leftist like myself, think about applying for a job at Walmart and let Walmart pay you to agitate their workers. Organize a wildcat strike for next Black Friday. If you're interested in economic revolution, rather than turning your nose up at certain places of employment for their horrible treatment of workers, apply for jobs with them. You might be surprised how many allies you can find already working there who are just as pissed off as you are, but can't quite articulate the reason for their resentment. So why not go and help them out with a conversation over a smoke break? Just an idea.
Killing you!
If you'd like to become a sustaining subscriber, please go over to my blog, punkpatriot.com. And if you'd like to throw, $1, $5 my way, whatever you think this video is worth, you can go ahead and do that either at the link in my video description or again over at my blog at punkpatriot.com.
Today I'm teaching you how to replace your divots. A true sportsman always replaces his divots. First, grab a handful of sand. Then, look for a beige Chrysler LeBaron. Watch the traffic. It could be her. The past is a mystery. The future is history. Take time to dance. Dance like no one's watching. It's not you, it's her. If you love something, you have to let it go. My name is Bruce Brian Billings, and I'm so cold right now. Why is it so cold in here? Why is it so cold?
Kawani Jolifanto Blumba o Fali Hambla. Grossiga me Pafla Habla Hormigaga Gorman. High Globlo Ikora Sula Huju. Holaka Holala. And Logobang, Blagobang Baso Putaka. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
And now let's meet our first contestant. Will you come in and sign in, please? Panel, as you probably have realized, there is an area of identification here that might be in appearance, costuming, name, some area of identification which would give you too much information, so you're blindfolded. I would just ask our guest if you are fully familiar with how we keep score.
Yes.
All right, then in that case, let's let the folks at home and our friends here in the theater know exactly what your line is. Guest, who must also be unnamed, is self-employed. With that, let's begin the general questioning with Arlene Francis.
Are you associated with any of the arts?
Yes.
Would you ever have been seen on television?
Yes.
Are you a performer?
Yes.
Would you be considered a leading man?
Yes.
I got to move in here. Actually, in the general context of the questioning, we would have to accept that all the affirmative replies, except perhaps the last one, are not misleading in any major degree. However, I think the last answer is misleading, and we could not accurately describe our guest as a leading man.
He's a misleading man.
A misleading man he is. 1 down and 9 to go, Mr. Third.
Have you achieved eminence in some field other than television?
Yes.
Would it be the sort of exploit that might possibly reach the front page of a newspaper?
Yes.
Is it an exploit that's been on the front page of the newspapers within the past couple of weeks?
No.
No. 2 down and 8 to go, Miss Kilgallen.
Do you imagine that we're blindfolded because one or more of us would recognize you at sight?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Are you accustomed to appearing before audiences?
Yes.
When you appear before audiences, do you ever wear less than you're wearing now?
When you appear before audiences, do you ever wear less than you are wearing now? I would say that under certain specific conditions, it is not impossible that our guest would wear less than is being worn now, but it's not necessarily germane to what it is we're trying to arrive at.
Is that a yes or a no?
That is a kind of up and down yes.
Well, all right. Do you have anything to do with sports or any form of athletic endeavor?
Yes.
Ball conference. think it would be too misleading to suggest that our guest had a basic affiliation with sports. This is not to say that it is not within the compass of his enjoyment to indulge in this particular endeavor.
Thank you.
3 down and 7 to go, Mr. Lawford.
I'm still working on the last one. Do you appear continuously on television? By that I mean once a week or once a month. Can I see you?
No.
No. 4 down and 6 to go, Miss Francis.
Do you use anything in your hands for your job? Like a pencil or a typewriter or anything like that?
Yes.
Would you be considered a writer?
Would you be considered a writer?
Yes.
Yes,
There's nothing this man doesn't do. What we have to guess is an all-around man. Are you well known because of a book that has been published of yours?
Miss Arlene, if I may interrupt here, I would have to agree that we must consider that our guest is a writer.
We're going to agree that we must consider that our guest is a writer. We're going to consider it. You mean we're going to consider whether he is or whether he isn't?
No, this is merely actually to try and be completely fair. The talents of our guest are not encompassed entirely in this area of work.
Oh, then you can do several things. Truly, except sports.
That's a fair assumption, yeah.
Uh-huh. Have you had... I'm terribly lost. Have you had something published?
Does our guest have something published?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Does he write humorously?
Do you write humorously?
Yes and no.
The answer then, I think, is properly yes and no.
Oh. Could he, does he ever do any drawing like comic strips?
Do you ever do any drawing like comic strips?
Yes.
Yes?
Our guest says, yes, he does drawings like comic strips.
Is there something quite unusual about our guest?
I beg your pardon, Arlene? I missed that last one.
I just ask if there is something unusual because everything that he does, the audience laughs about.
No, there's nothing unusual, actually. This sort of thing goes on all the time.
I'm going to pass to Bennett.
Mr. Cerf?
You are a human being.
Very much so, Bennett. Very much so.
And there is no animal or dummy out there with you.
That's right. There is no animal or dummy out there with him except, perhaps...
I'm not talking about the master of ceremony.
That'll be all.
Have you ever written a book that was published by my firm?
Did Random House ever publish a book for you?
Yes.
And that'll teach you to make remarks about the master of ceremonies, sir.
Was this book published within the past year?
No.
No. That's 5 down and 5 to go, Miss Gilgallen.
Is it possible that we have not yet struck upon the major thing that our guest is famous for?
That is very possible.
He is still maintaining that he's a performer.
Well, yes, in the degree that he was asked if he had anything to do with the arts and then was asked if he was a performer, in that large context, we would have to accept that he was indeed a performer.
Well, yes, I'd love a conference, Arlene.
Was there a call for a
maybe
conference?
Have a conference, John?
You may have 15 seconds for a conference, and I'm going to give you 1 minute more to get it.
Ask if he could use his mustache to paint.
Have you a mustache that is rather well known? In fact, could you be almost caricatured just by that?
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you, Arlene. Are you Salvador Dali?
Salvador Dali is right.
Harry, what I want you to do is to see my composition, Every Man a King.
Fine.
I want you to play it over for these people. And if you like it, I want you to put it out.
Every man a king, every man a king, for you can be a millionaire.
That's fine.
But there's something belonging to others. There's enough for all people to share. When it's sunny June and December too, or in the winter time or spring, there'll be peace without end, every neighbor a friend, with every man a king.
What do you think about that, eh?
I think it's fine.
How's that, Mr. Senator?
That's fine, but aren't you going to sing it, since we've changed that last line to mean every girl a queen?
All right, I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
Every man a king, every girl a queen, for you can be a millionaire. But there's something belonging to others. There's enough for all people to share. When it's sunny June and December too, or in the winter time or spring, there'll be peace without end, every neighbor a friend, with every man a king.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Think you got a good band.
And the masses of America, 75 to 80 to 85% of the people not only give up their property year after year, but they go further and further and further into economic slavery, to where the flesh and blood of the born and the unborn will never be able to raise the debt, let alone come back and rescue the property that they've lost from these depressions.
The Republican and the Democratic parties have absolutely failed to help the farmers and the laboring class of the state. Therefore, I favor the Farmer Labor Party, and I'm doing all in my power to further its interests.
That's all.